say they have captured Vasiykivka in eastern Ukraine and carried out strikes on Ukrainian energy and transport infrastructure. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry reports precision attacks on 143 locations, including ammunition plants, over the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Ukraine says its forces attacked a Russian plant in Cheboksary that produces missile and drone components. Both sides continue to launch offensive operations as the conflict intensifies in multiple regions. All right, and let's welcome Major General retired Sudhakar Ji, who's an international relations and defense expert, joining us live from New Delhi. I extend you a very warm welcome here, sir, and thank you for joining us at NewsX World. Now, attacks continue to pound. Do you think this is a way of the sides to reject the so-called peace plan that's been drafted by Donald Trump?
No, not really. Firstly, good evening. Thank you for getting me for your show. And we, I think, discussed at length about the peace proposal yesterday, the pros and cons, and the likely options. So it is to be understood in the perspective that the 28-point peace proposal is basically a kind of a concept. And this concept has to be processed through different stages of validation, oblique scrutiny, tweaking, modifications, etc., because what is suitable to Russia may not be suitable and will not be suitable to Ukraine. So while that may be appearing to be a different subject altogether, yet I tend to agree with what you are actually is hidden in your question, that is it linked with what is happening with the Poland? No, there is certainly some kind of a linkage in such kind of an ongoing conflict, which has gone beyond 3.5 now, going to be 4 years now, and which a legacy of trust deficit, it is bound to have an impact on a day-to-day diplomatic relationship between two countries. And more so, if Poland has actually closed down its diplomatic the footprint in Russia, well, Russia also, it is a reciprocal, at the international level, Kriti, you will agree with me, most of such kind of response matrix is generally fraught with reciprocity in the relationship. If one closes one footprint, the other also will close. The similar thing has happened. Plus, there is something which was given, it's coming in the open media about the rail link actually having been subverted or something like that. I didn't have time to go into the details. But the fact of the matter remains that, yes, there are linkages which are not visible to the common man. How are the linkages coming to light is that nobody in Europe, if you recall, we had actually emphasized on this issue, none of the countries in Europe would like the peace process to go ahead in the manner, the way it is going, because the proposal has been mooted by none other than Russia itself. Thereafter, it is going to the stakeholders in Ukraine. Whereas the process of peace, if at all you want, they should actually follow a format which generally we are taught, or at least we have gone through in military. That is, wherever one is, just stop, freeze all activities. First, stop, make sure that there is a ceasefire. Thereafter, get onto the table, talk. Thereafter, you work out the modalities. Now, the ceasefire is not taking place. The firing is going on. Drones are flying left, right, center. Diplomatic missions are closing. So this, hybrid kind of response matrix is on, which is highly detrimental. It will not take the peace proposal anywhere ahead.
Absolutely, and let's not also forget the statement that had come from Lavrov, who said that if the revised peace plan is not in accordance with the Alaska summit, Russia would take further action, and that's clearly happening. It continues to happen as Russia moves forward into the Ukrainian territory. If it was in agreement to the so-called peace plan that's being devised by Trump administration, why would it actually do so?
A great point. That's I really appreciate that you are highlighting this point. You see, again, take your mind back to yesterday that we discussed. There are a couple of highlights, the central points of the peace, if at all it has to come into this mindless conflict in Russia-Ukraine war, then the first and foremost thing Russia wants is the neutrality or the neutral state of Ukraine. How can Ukraine assure neutrality? Where is the security guarantee? Now, when you talk about security guarantee, there are two terminologies: security assurance, security guarantee. Security assurance was given in 94. If you take your mind back, the Hungary's capital, Budapest Agreement, 94, 5th of December, if I respect my memory, is the nuclear warheads which are held in Ukraine had been handed over formally to Russia. And after having handed over, there are three countries, one is UK, one is USA, and the third is Russia. Three countries had given the assurance about the security, about the protection, about the insulating, I would say, that was a kind of assurance given, but there was no guarantee. The distinction between the two terminologies, one is legally binding, something like NATO Article 5. It is legally binding for all nations to come together if any other nation within the grouping of 32 is attacked at any point, any place in time. So similarly, in absence of a legal assurance, now what has happened? Even after Russia, America, and UK, plus there are two countries who had signed the agreement in parallel, China and France, way back in 94, nobody came forward to support or help Ukraine. Nobody, no boots on ground. Yes, material support was given to Ukraine by the Western alliances, but none of these countries. So the question arises, what happens to the security guarantee or the assurance to Ukraine? That is one. Number two is neutrality, which I have already highlighted. Third and most important point is that ceding of territory. In 21st century, do you say that in rules-based international order, will ceding of territory not compromise the very terminology of territorial integrity and sovereignty of a nation? It's a democracy. How can some country be like this? If it is happening with Ukraine, these are the counter questions which will keep coming up, and it is going to be over the dead body of Ukraine and Zelensky. How is it going to be accepted? So these are the issues which are likely to crop up, and therefore, if one component is trying to push the peace proposal ahead, you will have multiple components trying to pull it back. So this seesaw kind of game will continue until some push ahead is given by Donald Trump, because he is the only man and his team who are very, very serious and sincere, to my mind, to my study and joining of dots. They want the actually peace process to commence as soon as possible. For that, I would recommend just one more minute, if you allow me, that first and foremost thing for any peace to take place is to bring about ceasefire. Stop wherever one is, no firing, freeze the action, freeze all activities. Thereafter, go on to pull back the troops by a couple of kilometers onto either side. That is 5 kilometers that side towards Ukraine, 5 kilometers to this side. Thereafter, sit on the table and discuss. Take all the stakeholders on board and take them into confidence. It shouldn't happen, as Zelensky is saying, Ukraine has not been consulted when the peace proposal is being made. Russia shouldn't say that they have not been consulted. So some kind of a via media has to be worked out. United Nations, I suggest, has to play a very important role. It's sitting like a sitting duck, like a lame duck, without totally defunct in its neutrality and the mandate which has been given to it in the international order.
Well, I do see your point. For now, thank you for joining us, Retired Major General Sudhakar Ji on NewsX World, viewers. And with that, let's move on to news from the United Kingdom. Now, British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves has announced a big tax-raising budget that will take more money from workers